Welcome to this video on the Rawa channel. My name is Sri Satguru, Buddha Rawa Bhagwan. Today's video will talk a little bit about karma and how it operates within the Dharma. So all things exist within the Dharma. All things that exist in this level of physicality. So think if it's physical or spiritual, connected to the body, part of the body, part of the being of the person, it's connected to the Dharma. And then there is also the Tej, for example, the Aztec Tej, which is connected to all parts of that like a backdoor layer. So there are backdoor layers that are not part of the main structure of the Dharma. But the Dharma exists as that main structure of creation. Okay, so think the main structure of creation is the Dharma, and then there are also backdoor layers within which pantheons and stories of creation exist, and different other stories. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about karma today. Okay, karma not only takes place at the level of individuals, but also of collectivities of individuals. Okay? As people associate and categorize themselves under names and vibrations and patterns. Okay? Think, for example, people who are of a certain nationality, for example. Okay? As you have certain physical localizations which are associated to specific associations of individuals that associate under a specific name or given to a grouping of individuals in a specific land and territory. Okay, so as individuals have karma, okay, you've heard the term, if you do good things will happen to you. And if you do bad things will happen to you. Right? As a general rule. Or also, if you interact with life honestly, you're not going to have any surprises. And if you interact with life dishonestly, you'll probably, it might not be a surprise, but you can probably expect some negative results. Right? So the importance of being honest. Right? The importance of being genuine. Right? The importance of acting as a deva, right? A being of light, a being of God, and taking every single action that you take as a being of light, a being of God, and basically being aware of who you are and the impact that you have on your environment and yourself, right? But karma is something different. Karma is actually programmed within the system and is a direct counterbalance to every action. Okay? So every action has a consequence, right? So it is the counterbalance. Okay? So with the action or lack of action comes a consequence. Okay? And as this is true at the level of individuals, for example, think about it. You get up in the morning and you go to work. Okay, it's hard. You make your money. Okay, you have enough money to get through your bills, hopefully. Okay, but you don't do that. You're not willing to put in any effort to participate in society. There's no universal income yet. So in that sense, at that point, the consequences of your actions of not working or not doing anything to be productive in any other way, will lead to you not being productive and not getting a result. So do you get a result or no result with the action that is taken or not taken? What is the effect? What is the consequence? You also have short-term effects and consequences, medium-term, and long-term effects and consequences. So as you embark on one decision, it opens up different paths. right? And as every individual has that best path, that is the ideal path for them, that God wishes for them, of their most beautiful story and spiritual journey, people deviate from that path in their life and lose sight of it, if they had sight of it at all, right? So karma at the individual level means that, all your actions have consequences, okay? But it goes a step further than that, okay? It also goes that those consequences are forced into place in a way by karma, okay? So, you do something, right? And you take an action or you don't take an action, right? Well, you think you can run away from the consequence potentially, but no, you won't run away from the consequence. That consequence will still come, okay? Even if you change your way of acting in the future, but what you can do is you can accelerate those consequences in certain ways, and you can basically time them and go through them in a specific way, with specific intent to go through it and purify that karma in a specific way as well, if you're in the processes of purifying your karma, right? So you'll still go through the consequences, right? You'll still go through it. And so karma is a rule in the system, basically, that ensures that if you take bad action, bad things will happen to you, okay? Except if for some reason you are protected from the rules of karma from one reason or another, because you're offered that type of protection from a being that can do so. And there's not many of those. So karma is a rule that exists to different effects. As basically you can at some very high spiritual levels become basically in a way beyond karma, well, still your actions will have effects, right? Still your actions will have consequences, or your lack of action will have effect and consequences, but you won't have that push of the system which pushes in those consequences and actions. So basically a spiritually advanced being can navigate future karma, right? So essentially it doesn't stick to them, but the karma still exists, right? So they can navigate the path of future karma, which makes them in a way above karma. But most people can't do that. So most people, karma is very real, and you cannot escape the consequences of your actions. They will have a consequence one way or another. Even if you think that they don't have a consequence, it will be potentially, even if a consequence is required in the system, okay, by the laws of karma, the consequence may be even totally unrelated to the action. And that's one of the great rules and laws and truths of karma. It's not necessarily a consequence that you see a direct link to that action that you took. It could just be the system, which says we have to bring in a consequence because of this action which was taken, right? And then it is put in a way so you don't even see the link, but something that happens to you is in consequence because of that action, even though you don't see the link, even though there's no logical link as you would think about it. The link is through the law of karma as it exists in the system. Now, as karma exists at the individual level, okay, for all beings, except those rare exceptions, and you can work on that. It also exists at the level of organizations, at the level of countries, at the level of continents, at the level of alliances, at the level of everything that falls under a name and a space. Okay? Under a vibration. Karma governs different vibrations or nodes as they interact in this system. Vibrationary nodes that can become enlightened in their own way and grow as vibrationary nodes. So karma is the law. Okay, and as it exists for individuals, it also exists for organizations and nations. So, for example, when nations are associations of people, right? Which, what happens to a nation affects the people, right? So it's the karma individually, but it also becomes the karma as a group, right? When you associate as groups. So you have group karma and individual karma, or organization karma and individual karma, associated to a specific vibration or node that falls under a specific name, associated to other vibrations and nodes that fall under a specific name. Okay? So you have group karma as well. So for example, let's say you have a country that does an action that is not well perceived in the eyes of the gods of the Dharma. Well, you don't want to do that, right? Or, for example, the majority of people in the country are not taking the direction that the gods of the Dharma want them to take. Well, then at that point, the gods of the Dharma, through the law of karma, right, will give the consequence back, right? So that's why there are some that fear the gods, because they know, they say things like the gods play with men or all these different things, which is not the case. It's just, you know, it's a thing of karma. Everything is karma. So it's a rule that governs the interaction between the different nodes and the vibrations. So what you have to understand is that if you try to block that law, it's coming through, and it's coming through for ram, right? A battering ram. So there is also nation karma as well. Okay? Which is basically, you could say, the collective karma of those that exist within a nation or an organization, etc. And people within that organization are bound within that karma. Okay? So they are more or less associated with that karma. And if, for example, the nation or takes a direction, for example, that is adharmic, against the Dharma, against the will of the gods of the Dharma, then karma at that point, which determines good action versus bad action as a system, is dependent on the will of the creator of karma, the God himself and the goddess. So what happens is you have a situation where you can have a country, for example, that does a political decision or something like that, right? And that leads to, for example, innocents being injured or something like that, right? Innocent being taken, their homes taken from innocents or destroyed or something like that. You know, those things that we know that are adharmic, you know, that are evil, basically, right? When you come down to it, right? So against the Dharma, those things like hurting people, taking from others, all those things. whether that be within your own borders or within others, because sometimes they do it to the people within their own borders as well, right? As organizations. So you have nation karma, which means that basically they take an action and they think potentially that they're the strongest nation or something like that, and that, or whatever it is, and that they can take an action and no one can do anything about it because they think they're safe or protected from everything, but they can't escape from the consequence of the action. Karma, as a law within the Dharma, means that they will have the consequence of that action, right, or lack of action, right? So the consequence will come, and that consequence, if it is not able to come in a way that is connected to the action and the result, will come in a totally different way, right? Because there's nothing that's going to break the law of karma. So that action will have a result, potentially, and will have a consequence, even if the consequence is blocked from being connected to the action. So, that's a little bit worried because you don't even know from what angle karma is going to come and bring it to you. But in a good way, if you're doing good things, it's the same thing. You don't know where the good things are going to come to you, but they'll come, right? It's a reward system, and a system to basically teach experience as well. Why does karma exist, and why is there actions and consequences and results and all these things? It's because in this level of creation here, you're basically in a judgment realm. So you have to learn, by the time in the time that you're here, you have to learn to become that person. That's a person that belongs in paradise, in heaven, with their family and friends for eternal life, in the most beautiful place with all the most advanced technology, so that your time is your own and you can enjoy and work on whatever you want to do and enjoy the most beautiful landscapes of everything in heaven, right? So this is a place of judgment. So you're given situations, right, to teach you, right? So when you do something bad, usually it'll come connected to that. So for example, I'll give you an example. You do a bad crime, well, you're going to go to jail, right? Consequence of your action, right? Something like that, right? So that's a law of karma, it shows you right there. You do something bad, eventually you'll get caught, you'll go to jail, there'll be a consequence eventually. Maybe you don't get caught the first time, the second time, third time, fourth time, eventually you do, right? There's a consequence, right? Except if you're being protected against the laws of consequence in one way or another. So there's a consequence that happens, right? And that consequence, if it cannot come through a way that is connected to what you did or didn't do, will come in another way, because it is forced in by the system, by the law of karma, where the consequence will come even if it cannot connect any longer to the initial chain of action or inaction which led to the establishment of a green light on a consequence. Which basically means a go on the consequence. You did something, it triggers the switch, go to consequence. And depending on what you did, the level of what you did, the level of what the nation did, the country did, the organization did, the levels of the karmas of the individual, it impacts on everybody. So for example, let's say you have a country that invades another country, for example. Maybe one's stronger than the other, the one that's invading. Maybe the invading country is stronger, right? Maybe they take the other country. Maybe they have a hard time doing it, but maybe they take the country, and then they don't even know it, but because of their action, they're going to have a consequence that's going to come to all the people that were potentially not even at the same time necessarily, You know, it can be mixed consequences, different consequences. It's not only necessarily one thing. So for example, if you do something bad and you have bad karma, the law of karma, it's not necessarily only one thing that's going to come in consequence. It can be multiple things, piling things, you know. You can unleash a whole wave of consequences as well, right? Which come to basically which lead to a situation for you to learn, basically, to learn who you are, and who you need to be to get through this judgment, right? But if you were a little bit more intelligent, you wouldn't have to go through all the muck first. You know, you just basically become that deva, that shining being of God right away, and not have to take all the bad actions that hurt others first. Because who knows, man, what happens when you take that one action where you've gone too far? You know, maybe you can't take the bridge no more. And that's the kind of thinking that an Asura would like you to think, so that you'd stay at the Vaitarani River and become their food, right, and their plaything. But the truth is, you know, no one's beyond redemption. You know, a lot of people have done horrible things in their life, but you see a child in a burning building or something like that, and you jump in, you save that child, and that's the kind of stuff that really that impresses in the system. You know, people that are really real heroes, you know, heroes in all situation, willing to stand up for those difficult situations, you know, willing to stand up for life, for freedom, you know, for children, for women, for men as well. You know, those people who are really willing to stand up and be heroes in everyday life, even the little things, you know, just to live honestly is a heroic thing in a way as well, because life is difficult, you know, to live honestly, right? And you know, everybody has their little hustles or little thing to get by, and that's okay. Everybody does their little things, but to live from an honest heart, you know, an honest heart, and to be you know, that better person that you can be, and to provide to the world in the way that you can provide to the world, you know. And people do that in different ways. People have different talents, different abilities. You know, people come into this world with different talents, different abilities, different skills, right? You know, for many different reasons, you know. And many people are at different levels of spirituality. So many people are good in different things. Many people are good in, you know, producing things, you know, in commerce and trade, all these different things, which are essential to society. And some people are really good in spiritual things, which are essential to society. Some people are really good in protecting society and protecting order within society, which is really important. You know, so we see that everybody is important, and you know, some of the wisest people are the people that have the most simple life, right? You know, as some of the wisest people are maybe some that have the most complex life, right? So karma basically has an impact not only on individuals, but on associations of individuals as well. So for example, you have a country that takes an action that is basically not well seen in the eyes of the gods of the Dharma. Well, then that country will likely see a consequence, and that consequence, if it's not going to come through the same means, right, is going to come through another means. And a very simple means of consequence that God can use is things like earthquakes, okay, hurricanes, tornadoes, droughts, forest fires, and all these different things. And these are used in the biblical sense of the gods punishing literally with weather and the nature, you know, the people that live in the lands, okay, for their actions. So what you realize, and what you can actually see, and that's positive in this, is that on the opposite side, they reward for good action. Okay, so when people take good action, well, then there's less hurricanes, less earthquakes, less dry spouts, less disasters, and it doesn't just end there. It also takes place at the level of society. Society becomes more ordered, things take place better, airports become more efficient, everybody becomes more efficient, people start developing as the gods invest in society, invest in people, right? And society grows spiritually, and also at all the other different levels which are essential to society and life within the Dharma, right? So karma is a law of the Dharma that exists within the Dharma, Okay, so karma is a law not only of action and consequence that is linked, but a law beyond that, so that consequence can also come in a way that is not linked to the direct action if it is set in green light and put in motion by the initial action or lack of action. Thank you for listening to this video on the Zenwara channel. Tak. Rasiva.